TPC, no Bryson DeChambeau. He's pulled out of this. What are you looking for here?
Yeah, and one of the things, Gil, and I think Kelly would probably agree with this when he chimes in, is that this is one of the hardest tournaments on the PGA Tour to handicap, because a lot of weeks you can go and look at kind of like course form. It's like, okay, horses for courses. Certain guys always play well here. You'll see like a form line of 10th, 15th, 7th. You know, these are guys always in the top 5 or top 10 or top 20. You do not get that here. If you look at Rory Mcilroy, who won here in 2019, missed the cut the year before. Jason Day did the same thing, won in 2016, missed the cut the year before. And when you look at even patterns of players, you do not see a similar type of player. Yeah, you've got guys that can bomb it out there. Jason Day certainly did it. Rory Mcilroy did it. But you've also had the Tim Clarks and the KJ Chois and the Fred Funks win here basically over the last 20 to 25 years. So you do not necessarily have to be a bomber. These are a lot of dogleg holes. So you got to work your ball one way off the tee, and then you got to work it completely the opposite way into these very small greens, about 5,500 square feet on average. Depending on who you believe this year, these are usually Bermuda greens, but overseeded now that they've moved this event to March with some bent grass and some POA. But from what I've heard from observers on the courses, this may putt a little bit more like POA this week instead of Bermuda, which is very rare for Florida. You usually get all Bermuda grasses throughout the state.
Is there a reason, by the way, I'll throw this to both of you. Is there a reason why? Because we've heard that, right? The Masters would be the opposite. It's the most historically predictive,
yes,
right? What is it about this golf course that makes it the opposite of that?
I think having water on about every hole, 17 holes, of course, makes it a big deal. There's just a lot more ways to get in trouble on this golf course.
Yeah, so it's mainly that, right, Wes? And then what Wes was talking about before that you don't see at a ton of golf courses where they really make sure to make, you know, when you're seeing dogleg left or doglegs right, to basically even them out exactly the same. You'll have courses that will go, you know, down one way and then come back the other, and you'll see a lot of the same shots for several holes in a row. This course gives you a different look almost every hole, depending on where you're going, dogleg left, dogleg right. And then it's also a course, Wes, where you sometimes it's not best to play in the fairway. You want to set yourself up for different angles. Then you're hitting out of the rough, and they make the rough really long. It's always one of those. It's a combination of factors, but it's a lot of that, Gil. And then when you hear I think when you hear golfers say it and one after another says it, it's one of those, it has to be true when every golfer says it's hard for them to predict every year how they're going to do at this tournament. They all love playing it, but.
TPC Sawgrass with the iconic 17th hole, island hole that most people would know. As maybe the most recognizable hole, would you say, on the whole PGA Tour?
Yeah, I think so. And what Kelly is talking about, these holes going opposite directions, this is kind of like the late Pete Dye's masterpiece design, if you will, here in the United States, and it'll be on display this week.
But there are some certain stats that matter more than others, Gil. We'll talk about those on the other side in our bets.
All right, let's get back to golf. You guys, it's all yours. What do you got here, Wes?
Well, let me run down the odds board really quickly. The two favorites up top, I believe these are current odds at DraftKings, so they may have been switched a little bit throughout the week. Justin Thomas, the defending Players Champion here at 10-1. No Players Champion has repeated, I believe, ever repeated here in the history of this tournament. Jon Rahm, world number 1, he is 10-1. Colin Morikawa, 14-1. He is the world number 2. By the way, in terms of the top 5 in the world golf rankings, first time ever in the history of those rankings that you now have all 5 players in that top 5 under 30 years old, and a couple of those under 30 guys. Scotty Scheffler, 20-1. Patrick Cantlay, 20-1. Victor Hovland, 22-1. Lest I not skip Rory Mcilroy, who is the 2019 winner here at TPC Sawgrass, 16-1. Then you get into the 25s, Hideki Matsuyama, a 2-time winner on tour already this year. Xander Schauffele, 25-1. And then all the 30s, Daniel Berger, Cameron Smith, Brooks Koepka. By the way, he started at about 50-1 earlier this week, so more on Brooks Koepka later. Adam Scott, 30-1, also a former Players Champion. And Dustin Johnson, you don't see a big number on DJ very often, but 35-1 this week in Jacksonville.
No one talking about DJ anymore
No.
these days.
Well, he hasn't won in over a calendar year. The
Yeah.
last time he won actually was the 2021 Saudi International. He did not win on the PGA Tour last year. First time, I think, in maybe like a decade that he did not win a PGA Tour event.
Is that right? You know, if you had asked me that and be like, "Hey, Gil, did DJ win a tournament last year?" I'd have been like, "Oh, of course he did."
And no, it's true. Yeah, he didn't win. And Wes, what he hasn't looked terrible, but he has not looked good by any means. He's not a guy I'm running to bed, even at the numbers that you're seeing on him now.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the pending marriage to Paulina Gretzky. I mean,
I'd be nervous,
I
too.
saw the photos on the gram of her bachelorette party. I'm sure a good time looked to be had by all, but probably a little bit of focus on that could be taking a little bit of focus perhaps away from his golf game.
So
Wes always has the answer.
always is the answer.
No stone unturned, no village unpillaged here on this program, fellas.
There you go. All right, Wes, what'd you look at stat-wise this week?
Yeah, I mean, I always look at approach. I think that's kind of like the starting point. I think if you're ever doing like modeling for golf, you want to be good with your irons. And this week it's going to be weird too because the weather.
One of the most important tournaments where this stat's going to come into play. I would say.
Because the weather is going to get a little funky over the weekend. We might get 20 to 30 mile an hour winds, and then everything gets turned upside down. I did look a little bit at good drives gained. I think that takes into account your ability to place it off the tee. Even if you miss the fairway, the average rough, I think, is like 2.5 inches. So not as penal as we certainly saw last week at Bay Hill when you miss fairways. But I looked at that. I looked at greens and regulation gained are kind of like a crossover with approach. You'll get a lot of the same guys. Proximity here in terms of proximity to the hole, it's 20% more difficult than the average PGA Tour event just due to the smaller greens. So I did look at that. Strokes gained par 4. Bogey avoidance, I think, is going to be important this week, too, because of the 15 players that earned at least a share of a top 10 finish here at the Players last year, 7 of them ranked for the season on the PGA Tour, top 20 in bogey avoidance. Strokes gained short game a little bit and a little bit with windy conditions, but that's so hard to like model. I just happen to look at it to see, okay, how have they done in the really windy conditions? I believe at Fantasy National, where we kind of use a lot of our stats for modeling, the category is known as Windy AF. Windy as you know what. And 20 to 30 mile an hour winds sound like that will qualify for Windy AF over the weekend.
Yeah, it's the Wes, I don't know about you, but that any tournament when you're looking at small greens, it's always important to plug in that bogey avoidance to me, because that is, you want guys who are going to be able to get on that green, and if they get on, they better not be 3-putting, right? You don't think they're going to be 3-putting, but they better not be. Or if they're going off the green, then they're probably ended up with a bogey. So bogey avoidance, whenever you're playing a tournament with smaller greens, always an important stat. I plugged that in as well. Strokes gained approach, huge here. Greens and regulation, like you brought up. I did plug in par 4, strokes gained par 4, strokes gained par 5. If you're going to win this tournament, you got to play the par 5s well. There are 4 of them on this course. You don't see that every single week on the PGA Tour, but you're going to have to score on the par 5s this week. I did a little bit around the green and a little bit of scrambling, not too much. I weighed off the tee heavier here than I have been. I am each week weighing that more and more. I just think it's becoming more and more important in today's game, not only the distance, but these guys that can keep it accurate off the tee, because there's so many good approach players these days, Wes. I just worry about these guys off the tee box sometimes. So I want that mixture of guys that are good from tee to green at least, get it up there, and then let putting do its thing.
Yeah.
'Cause we're going to see guys putt great some weeks and putt horrible other weeks, but from tee to green, I need you to play well. So I did plug off the tee in pretty heavily into my model this week. This would be the second week all year, Gil, that Justin Thomas, I would say, has outweighed Jon Rahm in my models. So I did fire on Justin Thomas. He was one of my outright plays. I got him at plus 1750 here in town. I saw him up to almost 20-1 over at Circa today, which is very, very off market from what you're going to see on the East Coast. So sorry if you're seeing 10-1 and 12-1s out there. Daniel Berger was consistently top 5 in every model that I ran. 34-1. I grabbed on him and outright. Love him this week up there. Brooks Koepka took one of those 50-1s when I saw that early on, Wes. I'd said 50-1. Brooks in Florida. I can't pass up on that. Sung JM, I would say, is my third best behind Thomas and Berger as far as where he popped in the models this week. So able to get a 50-1 on Sung J M. Loved that on the outrights. And then Will Zalatoris taking him at 50-1, going back to him as well this week. And I do have a small bet on Gary Woodland because I will not quit Gary Woodland until he finally gets off the schneid and wins.
Too soon.
Yeah, and Kelly and I actually have a lot of overlap this week with
Yes, you do.
Berger, Koepka, M. I did play Gary Woodland. Back-to-back fifth-place finishes, and it looked like we all had everybody surrounded here except for the actual winner, Scotty Scheffler. I know Kelly had Gary Woodland. I had 3 of the top 5 last week. I had Victor Hovland, I had Billy Horschel, and I had Chris Kirk. And neither of them get the outright, so that's why, I always kind of try to put a little piece on top 5 and top 10. It's not indicated on the screen there. But my outrights, I did use John Rahm 14-1. He kind of popped number 1 on a lot of the stats that I looked at. He should have really finished better last week at Bay Hill. He was just a disaster with the putter, but he led the field, and he actually leads coming in the last 24 rounds. He leads this field for strokes gained off the tee, strokes gained approach, the best approach numbers he has had since the Northern Trust in August. So Berger, Koepka, and M for the reasons Kelly covered. Shane Lowry, 50-1, who was standing on the 18th tee with the chance to win at PGA National at the Honda Classic 2 weeks ago, but then all of a sudden the rain came at the worst amount of time. However, if you look at Shane Lowry's career, he is probably one of the best players in the world in bad conditions, and he's got that claret jug from 2019 to absolutely prove it. That was a monsoon over there at Royal Portrush, and he got the claret jug for his major championship. Alex Noren, another kind of inclement weather player that I think could be very good in the wind at 100-1 for me.
I had Woodland and Hatton last week, so we were all just flirting
Terrell
with it.
putted great. It looked like it, and we were monitoring the in-play over the weekend, and it was like, maybe do I want to take him at 8-1? He's just sitting there at 4 under, just kind of waiting for these dudes to finish. And
I thought that would help him
Yeah.
getting in early.
yeah.
The other thing, one thing I want to bring up quick on John Rahm is this is the first tournament that first tournament in maybe 2 months where I would say he's actually playable. For everything that Wes just laid out, the stats are still there with how well he's been playing, but now you're actually seeing odds that are not 6-1, 7-1. You can actually bet him at a reasonable price now.